Validation and verification are both checks on input data, and they are constantly confused, so start with the distinction and keep it. Validation asks, is this data sensible? Could it possibly be right? It is an automatic check performed by the program against a rule. Verification asks a completely different question. Is this data what was actually intended? Was it entered correctly or copied accurately? Now here is why they cannot substitute for each other, and it is the point the whole section rests on. Suppose a date of birth is entered as the 12th of March 1990. Validation checks it. It is a real date in a reasonable range, correctly formatted. It passes, but the person's actual birthday is the 12th of March 1980. The data is completely valid and completely wrong. Validation cannot possibly catch that because there is no rule the value breaks. Only verification can, checking the entry against the source. So the answer to when do you need both is always, because they detect different kinds of error. The validation checks the syllabus names. A range check. The value falls between a stated minimum and maximum, a mark between 0 and 100, a month between 1 and 12. A length check. The data has the right number of characters, a phone number of 11 digits. A type check. The data is of the right data type. An age must be an integer, not text. A presence check. Something has actually been entered, and the field is not blank. A format check. The data follows a required pattern, 2 letters, then 6 digits, or the shape of an email address, and a check digit, an extra digit calculated from the others, which we covered in detail back in topic 2.2, used to detect mistyped or transposed digits in codes such as barcodes and ISBNs. That last one is worth connecting rather than relearning. It is the same mechanism appearing here as a validation technique. A validation check is not finished when it decides the data is wrong. It must do 2 things: reject the invalid data and give the user a chance to try again, usually with a message saying what was wrong. An algorithm that detects bad input and then carries on regardless has not validated anything, and one that rejects the input without explaining why is genuinely unhelpful. In pseudocode, the shape is a loop. Repeat asking for the value while the value fails the check. Notice it is a loop rather than a single if because a user can get it wrong twice. A single if checks once, and if the second attempt is also invalid, that bad value goes straight through. If a question asks you to write a validation check, writing an if where a loop is needed is a common and expensive slip. Length check and format check are the pair most often merged, and the table on the page separates them properly. A length check counts characters and nothing else. A format check tests the pattern, which characters in which positions. Work through the examples. Take a code that must be 7 characters, in the pattern 2 letters, then 5 digits. The entry AB 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 characters, so the length check passes. 2 letters, then 5 digits, so the format check passes too. Now ABC 1, 2, 3, 4, still 7 characters, so length passes. But the pattern is 3 letters, then 4 digits, so format fails. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, only 5 characters, so length fails. Format fails as well, since it does not match the pattern. That middle case is the important one. It shows that a length check alone would have accepted data in entirely the wrong shape. The 2 checks answer different questions, and a system needing both must perform both. Verification then, and there are 2 methods on the syllabus. A visual check. The person entering the data reads it back against the original document and confirms it is correct. It is simple and it costs nothing, but it depends on human attention, and people reliably see what they expect to see rather than what is there. Double entry. The data is entered twice by the same person or 2 different people, and the computer compares the 2 versions. If they differ, at least one is wrong, and the user is asked to check. That is why you type a new password twice, and why bank details are often confirmed by re-entry. But double entry is not foolproof, and knowing why shows real understanding. If the person makes the same mistake twice, the 2 entries match perfectly and the system reports no problem at all, and that is not unlikely. If someone has misread a 7 as a 1 on the source document, they will misread it identically the second time because the cause of the error is upstream of the typing. Notice what this means. Double entry catches slips, which are random, but not misreadings, which are systematic. That is a genuinely useful distinction, and it is why the strongest systems combine double entry with a visual check against the source and with validation rules on top. No single check catches everything, which is the same layering argument we met in cybersecurity. Put them side by side, question asked, validation asks, is this data sensible? Verification asks, is this data what was intended? Performed by validation is automatic, done by the program. Verification involves the user or a comparison of two copies. When validation happens as the data is entered, checked against rules. Verification happens at entry or when data is copied or transferred. Catches. Validation catches data that breaks a rule. Verification catches data entered or copied incorrectly. And what neither catches, validation cannot detect a valid but wrong value, and verification cannot detect a value that was faithfully copied from a source that was itself wrong. Being able to state that last row is what separates a full answer from a definition. 4 things to take into the exam. First, define the two by the question each asks. Validation is it sensible? Verification is it what was intended? And if you have room, give the example of a valid but incorrect date of birth, because it proves the distinction rather than asserting it. Second, name the specific validation check rather than saying the program validates the input. Range check, length check, type check, presence check, format check, check digit. Third, remember a validation check must reject the data and allow re-entry, and that this needs a loop rather than a single IF. And fourth, when asked about verification, say why double entry can still fail. The same mistake made twice produces 2 matching entries, because that reasoning is where the higher marks are.